Hey guys, Mark from Northeast Bass Fishing. How you doing? Well, here is my second trip from last week. I finally edited these clips together, and this is a new lake in Vermont. I'd never fished before, and so I wanted to try it out. So I took a ride up, and it's a nice lake. It's a nice lake. Here I am, just kind of an hour in. I'm pitching a jig on a dock there, and that's my first bass on that new Tech heavy duty jig. That's that first one. You guys have seen the short I put out on it. That's the first fish I caught on it. And that jig is pretty nice. It comes through the cover really well. Doesn't get hung up very easy, and if I do get it hung up, it pops off pretty good. So so far so good. I think I like it. Here's another view of that fish, just a closer view. But as I said, new lake in Vermont. Had never fished it before. So when I first started, I was kind of just working around the shoreline, throwing a chatterbait, throwing the fluke a little bit, throwing the Tech swim bait around, and then I got to some dock areas and some weed areas, and I started flipping. So that is my one jig fish of the day. I thought it was going to be really good on the docks after that, but I didn't catch another dock fish the rest of the day. So here, this is like the end, I guess you'd call it the south end of the lake, and I just started throwing the chatterbait around. It's what it turned out to be, a pretty big flat area with scattered weeds. And I just started throwing the chatterbait around, seeing what I could find. And this is the first fish that I caught on the chatterbait. So, when you go to a new lake, you're kind of just exploring, trying to kind of like put the puzzle together of what the fish like, what the cover's like, what the depth is like. And, here I am, in October going there. So I'm sure the weed growth is a lot different in the summertime, because there were some areas that looked like they could be pretty good frog type areas, but that wasn't happening here. This time of year it was a little cooler out in the morning, so I just worked this flat with the chatterbait, and you saw that bass that on that previous clip, and then it became. I'm not sure if I don't remember if this is the bass. This might be that bass again. So as with the jig on the dock, I thought, oh, it's going to be a good, it's going to be a good day on the docks with the jigs, which I caught that one on there. And then I thought after this fish, it was going to be a good day throwing the chatterbait around in this area. But that was the only bass. After that, and for the next maybe hour, it became a pickerel fest. So as you can see in these short clips that I put together, it just became pickerel after pickerel after pickerel. So, but as I said, it's a new lake, so you're kind of exploring, trying to get the idea, the lay of the land, what the lake is like, how it sets up. And so I worked this flat for a while with the chatterbait. And I think I threw the spinnerbait around here for a while. And you see a lot of those toothy critters. I caught a bunch of those. And just put these clips together. It almost looks like the same clip, but just another gator. They were all over these weeds. But I think it looks like I put that one on twice. So you get to see that gator twice. So I'm just working around, and all those docks you see over there, I did flip those with the jig, and there was nothing on them. I'm sure there's times of the year when there are, but that day when I was there, they weren't. So I just kept flipping around with the chatterbait, and as I said, one toothy critter after another. And luckily, none of them stole my chatterbait. They weren't, as you can see, real big. I'm sure there's probably some decent-sized ones in there. And you can kind of get a good long view of the lake there. Nice lake up in Vermont. As I said, never been to it before. Never been to it. It was nice. Nice ramp. Took the skeeter out and that turned out to be a nice day. And so here it is. As I said, still in October, and it's pretty warm out. It got warm as the day went on. Here I'm throwing that Tech, the 3.8, just on a jig head. And I think I'm throwing a black one. And as it was for like that hour and a half there, it was pretty much just pretty much toothy critters everywhere I went. I think on the cast before this, I was throwing a spark shad around, and a toothy critter tore the tail off of that. So I went through the Tech, and then there's another pickerel. So the pickerel were a little active that morning. But soon after this, I get my best fish of the day. And I'd like to think that maybe this is kind of like what this lake has. I started throwing the Ned. There were some points. I throw the Ned out, just that robo worm Ned that I've been fishing. Actually, I think this isn't that. This isn't the good bass yet. This, I think, is another. I think this is a largemouth on the Kitech, if I remember right. Now that I see the clip and that rod that I got. Yep. Yeah, so you can see that black Kitech there on the jig head. Started swimming that around. Catch that little largie on that. See that black Kitech, the 3.8. And here we go. So here I started throwing the Ned out about 10 to 12 feet, and set the hook. I'm like, oh, this feels like a pretty good fish. And I'm afraid it's maybe a big gator or something. But as you guys will see, it's a nice largemouth. Nice largemouth. So I'm hoping this lake has some big fish in it. Granted, I'm fishing it in the fall, some of the toughest time of the year, in between that, that early fall time. This is the time when the fish are really scattered around. So this lake, I think, definitely has some good potential. And I've heard good things about it, so I think this fish is probably, I'm sure there's probably some good ones in here. And it was nice to catch a decent one on my first trip there. But as you can see, guys, it's a nice largie. And the reason it's a nice chunk, I think he was about 4 pounds. The scale was kind of like 3.95, 3.98, then 4.02, and then back down to the 3. So very high 3s, low 4s. We'll just call him a 4. But as you can see, I'm either swinging or lifting every fish because I did forget my net in my little boat. But as you can see, that's a nice chunky largemouth right there. So I would assume there's some big fish in the lake, and he was pretty fat, so he was feeding up. Here's another view of that fish. Just throwing the net out. It's kind of like a point there. It's not a really big point. There was like 3 or 4 small points, in a row on this side of the lake. And, finally getting a good fish. So it's always nice to go to a new lake and find a quality bass so they're in there. I did not catch any smallmouth. I know there's smallmouth in the lake. But on this day, they were not showing themselves. It's pretty much largemouths and pickerel. And I did have some big perch follow up my swim baits, but, just kind of biting at the tail that I saw. So there are some good-sized perch in there. I did see some pretty good-sized schools of perch. But here's a good view of that largie, a 4-pounder, which is by far the best bass of the day. So I'd like to go back. I'd like to maybe hit this lake one more time because the water was still almost 70 degrees. I think once it starts to cool down, things will probably pick up a little. And it is supposed to get cool this week, so I think the water temps will start to cool down. Maybe get the fish starting to want to feed up. But there's a good view of that fish. I thought the front view of the camera was a little better for this one, so I think I used pretty much most of my front view camera shots after this one. But I just kind of took this fish, went over in the cove. I wanted to get in the shade and get some pictures of him. But you can see that belly. So he was definitely feeding up. He was definitely starting to feed up. But that is definitely the best bass of the day. So I'm kind of working along the shoreline. It's getting warmer as the day goes on, and I kind of stuck with, I think the Ned, when I think about it here, was probably the best bait the rest of the day. And I was just working from point to point. And I didn't even start the big motor until the end of the day because I was just, it's a new lake, so I'm just kind of exploring, going along the shoreline, seeing what the bottom is like. Is it weedy? Is it rocky? How does the depth change? And I was throwing, what's the name of that color? Oh, that morning dawn color with that chartreuse tail. That's what I was throwing. And they were eating it. They were eating it pretty good. That's the color Ned I was throwing. I just happened to have that on, and it was working pretty well. So I'm just kind of working along the shoreline, throwing the Ned, dragging it along the bottom, staying off the bank, because every time I'd go by, and fish any shoreline cover, there was nothing on it. There was nothing on it. They were definitely off the bank in deeper water. And you can see that morning dawn Ned, decent largie. and just kind of picking one off here and there. And by the afternoon, it was getting pretty warm out. I've got my shorts on now, and just a t-shirt. And this is kind of like another area that's somewhat of a point, deeper water. Throwing that net around. And another little largie. At least the pickerel at this point had stopped biting. So maybe they're more towards the end of the lake there in that shallow flat area. But little largemouth on the Ned. And I'm kind of like that's like a point area. And you can see there's weeds and stuff, and the shoreline weeds. They weren't producing anything. I don't think the fish, there was much. If there was any fish shallow, I wasn't getting any. And here I'm throwing a fluke, and this is the Zoom fluke. I decided to throw that around, and I got the first cast, I had a bite on it and got off, and then I'm throwing it in this area, and I catch a pretty decent largemouth. And that was kind of it. So it was a decent day, nice lake. I think it has a lot of potential. I'll definitely go back to it. And there I'm throwing that white pearl Zoom fluke on a 4-aught hook, and just working it along on the shoreline. And like the end of the day, the last hour was pretty slow. Just some fish following and some little fish, but nothing really worthy, nothing that made the final cut. But there you guys can see that nice bass there on that fluke. And that was it, guys. So pretty good day. Caught a nice fish, caught some bass, got to see what the lake was like. So it was always nice to go and find and explore a new lake. See you soon on YouTube. Mark out.